Hello and welcome back to the show. I'm your guide to the inner workings of Washington, and today we have, well, a fascinating puzzle to solve.
And I'm here to help put the pieces together.
Welcome to Congress in Context. We are your guides to what actually happened in the Capitol, stripping away all the spin and looking at the raw data.
Yeah, we want to see how it affects your street, your business, your community.
Our goal is always the same. We take the congressional record, which, let's be honest, can be a little dry.
It's like reading a phone book sometimes.
Right. And we try to find the narrative hidden inside, because there is always a narrative.
Always.
And today we are zooming in on Friday, February 13th, 2026.
A Friday the 13th. Ominous.
I know, right? You'd expect something really dramatic. Thunder, lightning, maybe a filibuster that lasts till midnight.
Yeah.
But if you were physically standing in the House gallery, looking down at the floor on that specific Friday, you would have seen, well, almost nothing.
It was a ghost town.
The session started at 10 a.m. and it ended at 10:03 a.m.
3 minutes. 3 minutes? The Senate was even faster. They were in and out in 15 seconds.
If you blinked, you missed the entire Senate session for the day.
Exactly. So the visual was an empty room, but, and this is why we do this deep dive, the written record for that day is thick. It's heavy. It's full of legislation, history, and a genuinely heated political fight that nobody actually heard with their ears.
And that's the whole paradox of what's called a pro forma session. The physical activity is minimal. It's, basically legal housekeeping to satisfy the Constitution.
Right.
But the extensions of remarks, that's the appendix where members can insert speeches and tributes. That's where the real human pulse of Congress was beating that day.
So let's open up the book. Let's start with the hard news, the actual machinery of government that kept turning even during a 3-minute meeting. We saw some movement on legislation.
We did. The headline item here is HJ Res 142.
Okay, for those of us who don't speak legislative, break down what a J-Res is versus a normal bill. Sure. A joint resolution, or HJ-Res, is a legislative measure that needs approval from both the Senate and the House.
Okay.
And then it's presented to the president for signature. It has the force of law, just like a bill. And in this case, it was reported by the clerk as having been signed by the speaker the day before.
And what was it about? What's the content?
It's a disapproval resolution. Congress is disapproving an action taken by the District of Columbia Council.
What action?
It was about the D.C. Income and Franchise Tax Conformity and Revision Temporary Amendment Act of 2025.
This feels like a classic Federalism 101 moment. Why is Congress meddling in D.C.'s local tax laws?
Well, it's not just meddling, it's actually constitutional design. Under the Home Rule Act, D.C. has its own local government, but Congress keeps the ultimate authority over the district's budget and laws.
Ah, okay.
So if the D.C. Council passes a law that Congress really dislikes, in this case, a tax amendment, Congress can step in and essentially veto it.
So it's a reminder that if you live in D.C., your local laws are always subject to a congressional permission slip.
Precisely. It's a tension that has existed for decades. This resolution is just Congress flexing that oversight muscle, saying, hey, we don't agree with how you're aligning your tax code, and then shutting it down.
Okay, so moving from what passed to what was proposed. Even in a super short session, the hopper, that's the wooden box where members dropped new bills, was busy.
It was. We saw bills H.R. 7567 through H.R. 7587 introduced. A solid stack of new ideas.
I want to look at a few of these because they really act as a barometer for what the country is, anxious about right now. Let's start with H.R. 7567, introduced by Mr. Thompson of Pennsylvania.
This one is the heavyweight of the bunch. It's a bill to reform and extend Department of Agriculture programs all the way through 2031.
2031. That seems incredibly far off. Why such a long runway for that?
It's pretty standard for ag policy, but it's critical. I mean, farming isn't like a tech startup. You can't just pivot in a week.
Good point.
Farmers are making planting decisions, buying equipment, managing debt, all based on cycles that last for years. They need to know what crop insurance looks like, what subsidies look like, for the next 5 years, not just the next 5 months.
So Thompson is essentially trying to lock in some stability for the rural economy.
Exactly. When you see a date like 2031, don't think science fiction. You should think business certainty.
Speaking of science fiction becoming business reality, let's look at H.R. 7576. This is from Mr. Gottheimer, a Democrat, and Mr. Lawler, a Republican.
Bipartisan.
It's the Worker Artificial Intelligence Training Bill.
This one is fascinating. It signals a real shift in how Congress is treating AI. For the last few years, the conversation has been almost entirely about safety. Will the robots take over? Or How do we stop deepfakes?
Right, all the doom and gloom.
But this bill is practical. It establishes a tax credit for workforce AI training. It's admitting that these tools are here to stay, and instead of just regulating them, we need to incentivize companies to teach human beings how to use them.
It's the if you can't beat 'em, join 'em approach.
Or maybe, if you don't join them, you'll be obsolete. It's an acknowledgement that the skills gap is widening. If American workers don't know how to leverage these AI models, workers in other countries will.
So it's an economic competitiveness play disguised as a tax credit.
That's a great way to put it.
And then we have a bill that touches on the other end of the economic spectrum, H.R. 7580, from Mrs. Luna. This would prohibit the purchase of nutritionally deficient foods with SNMAP benefits.
This is a battleground we see every single time nutrition assistance comes up. The fundamental question is SNAP just income support for food, or is it a public health program?
And who gets to define nutritionally deficient?
That is the sticky part. Is it soda? Is it chips? Is it white bread? Mrs. Luna is arguing that taxpayer dollars shouldn't fund empty calories, especially with the obesity epidemic.
But the other side.
Opponents usually argue that restricting choice makes it harder for poor families to shop, or that it's, paternalistic, it's a value judgment written right into the Ag Code.
Before we move on from the hopper, there was one resolution that wasn't really about policy but about memory, HRS 1066.
Yes, from Mr. Foster and a group of his colleagues. It's honoring the victims of the Aurora, Illinois mass shooting from February 15th, 2019.
7 years later.
And that's important. We get so caught up in the now of politics, the tax credits and the SNAP debates, that we forget Congress is also a custodian of national tragedy. These resolutions make sure those dates and names don't just vanish from the record.
That's a perfect bridge to our next segment. We've talked about the dry bills, but the extensions of remarks section on this day was incredibly human.
This is my favorite part of the record, always.
So for you listening, here's the setup. Because the House floor session was only 3 minutes long, nobody gave these speeches at a podium. They typed them up, walked them down to the clerk, and had them inserted into the history books.
A permanent part of the record.
So, while not spoken on the floor, Representative Angie Craig of Minnesota submitted a tribute that really caught my attention.
You're talking about Chief Jeff Tate.
I am. He's retiring from the Shakopee Police Department after 28 years. And usually, these police tributes can be pretty boilerplate, bravery, service, happy retirement.
Right.
But Chief Tate did something back in 2015 that was pretty radical.
Oh, yeah. You have to contextualize 2015. The opioid crisis was just raging, but the standard law enforcement response was still largely arrest your way out of it. If you found someone with drugs, they went to a cell.
But Tate did a complete U-turn.
He created the Recovery Assistance Program. The acronym was RAP. Instead of incarceration, his department started offering scholarships for addiction treatment.
A scholarship, not a handcuff. That's a massive culture shift for a police chief.
It is. And Ms. Craig points out that he didn't just do it in Shakopee. He joined national initiatives to teach other chiefs how to do it. It's a great example of how local innovation often comes way before federal policy. The feds are still catching up to what Chief Tate was doing 10 years ago.
Plus, Ms. Craig made sure to mention his obsession with Garth Brooks.
Even heroes have friends in low places, I guess.
Indeed. Now let's go from Minnesota to North Carolina. While not spoken on the floor, Representative Donald G. Davis submitted a statement honoring the late Yarbrough Williams, Jr.
This was a beautiful piece of writing.
It really was. Mr. Williams passed away in January 2026. He's from Warren County, and the text describes him as one of Exum's boys.
That phrase jumped out at me, too. It refers to Wilford Exum, who was a legendary masonry teacher. Apparently, Warren County was known as the capital of bricklaying because of this program.
And Yarbrough Williams took that torch and just ran with it. He taught bricklaying at Franklin High School for 33 years.
But think about the economics of that. In a rural community, teaching a trade like masonry isn't just about stacking bricks. It's about building a middle class. It's about economic independence.
And Rep. Davis noted that for many students, Mr. Williams was the first black business owner they had ever met.
That's a profound detail. He wasn't just a teacher. He was running a 3,000-head hog farm, a trucking company, and a construction business on the side.
I'm exhausted just hearing that list.
It's the definition of a pillar of the community. He built his own house at 19 because the banks wouldn't lend to him. He defied the odds at every single turn.
So by putting this in the record, Rep. Davis is ensuring that Yarbrough Williams isn't just a local memory, but a national one.
It says, your life mattered enough to be printed in Washington.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of local legends, We need to talk about ice cream.
I knew we were getting to the ice cream.
We have to. While not spoken on the floor, Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz of Florida submitted a tribute to Jackson's Ice Cream Parlor in Dania Beach.
Celebrating their 70th anniversary.
70 years. Founded in 1956 by Monroe Udell. Now, I've seen pictures of this place. It's got the license plates on the walls, the massive kitchen sink sundae. It just screams Americana.
It does. But if you look closer at the tribute, Rep. Wasserman Schultz isn't just talking about the sugar. She's talking about the social history of that business.
Right, 1956 in Florida. That is the Jim Crow South.
It is. And the record notes that Monroe Udell hired black employees and treated them with dignity long before the Civil Rights Act mandated it. He hired a man named George Hadley, who worked there for 38 years.
That was not an easy stance to take in 1950s Florida.
No, it wasn't. It was a business risk. And later in life, Monroe kept pushing. The tribute mentions that on his 86th birthday in 2014, he voluntarily raised his staff's minimum wage from $7.93 to $10.10 an hour.
Wow. Just because he thought it was the right thing to do.
He even got a letter from President Obama for that. So, yeah, it's a fun story about an ice cream parlor, but it's also a story about how small businesses can drive social change just as much as legislation can.
And just to round out our tour of local heroes, we had a submission from Representative Benny G. Thompson of Mississippi honoring a Mrs. Juanita Brown.
An educator for 40 years and a hospital trustee, she's the archetype of the person who actually runs a small town. The goodwill ambassador, as he called her.
It's nice to see that recognition. But
yeah,
we have to address the elephant in the room, or rather the elephant in the paperwork.
The contrast.
The contrast. We've just spent 10 minutes talking about unity, community service, bricklayers, ice cream. It sounds like a Norman Rockwell painting.
It really does.
But if you turn the page in the congressional record for this same day, you run into a buzzsaw.
This is where the Congress in Context mission gets tricky, right? We have to look at the silence of the room versus the noise in the text.
Exactly. So, while not spoken on the floor, Representative Betty McCollum of Minnesota submitted a speech opposing S. 1383, the Save America Act. And the tone shift here is whiplash-inducing.
It is violent. This is a bill about election security, specifically requiring proof of citizenship to vote. Republicans argue it's common sense. Representative McCollum frames it as a direct attack on democracy.
She calls it an attempt to nationalize elections.
Yeah.
But she gets very specific about who she thinks it hurts.
She focuses on women. Her argument is that millions of women, she cites 69 million, have changed their names because of marriage or divorce.
Okay.
So their current ID might not perfectly match their birth certificate or proof of citizenship. She argues this bill would create a bureaucratic trap that disenfranchises them.
That's a potent argument because it moves the debate from an abstract idea of fraud to the logistical nightmare of does my paperwork match?
Exactly. But she goes further. She brings up the enforcement side. She explicitly mentions Attorney General Bondi, that's Pam Bondi, and accuses her of trying to blackmail the state of Minnesota.
Blackmail is a very heavy word to put in the congressional record.
It is. She claims that the Attorney General demanded the state hand over its voter rolls, and if they didn't, the federal government would unleash an ICE surge, basically flooding the state with immigration enforcement agents.
So she's alleging a quid pro quo. Hand over the data or we send in the agents.
That is the allegation right there in the text. She calls it an abuse of power. And remember, she didn't say this into a microphone. She submitted it in writing.
Why does that distinction matter? Why write it if you aren't going to say it out loud?
Well, two reasons. One, the session was only 3 minutes long, so she couldn't say it. But two, by putting it in the extension of remarks, she creates an official anchor point. It's there for historians, it's there for legal challenges, and it's there to rally her base.
It establishes the opposition on the official ledger of the United States.
That's it. It's fascinating. If you watch the video feed, you saw a peaceful, empty room. If you read the text, you see a fierce battle over the fundamental mechanics of voting and federal power.
The difference between the theater of Congress and the reality of the debate.
You got it.
So let's wrap up with the mechanics of how this day even happened. We joked about the pro forma session at the start, but let's explain it. Why did the Senate meet for 15 seconds? Why even bother?
It comes down to the Constitution. Article 1, Section 5 says that neither chamber can adjourn for more than 3 days without the consent of the other.
So they can't just take a vacation unless they both agree to it.
Right. And in this partisan climate, getting them to agree on a recess schedule can be tough. So the workaround is the pro forma session. You just send one person in to bang the gavel and say, we met.
And that resets the 3-day clock?
That resets the clock. So that 15-second Senate session was just to avoid breaking the Constitution.
And in the House, Speaker Mike Johnson wasn't even there.
No. The record shows a letter was read appointing Representative Michael K. Simpson as Speaker pro tempore.
So poor Mike Simpson had to come in on Friday the 13th to preside over a 3-minute meeting.
Someone has to draw the short straw, but it's a vital role. Without him there to accept the papers, report the bills, and adjourn the House, the whole legislative machine just grinds to a halt.
It's the unglamorous plumbing of democracy.
It really is. And that's the takeaway for today. February 13th, 2026 was the day of contrasts. You have the high-level procedural maneuvering, the pro forma sessions. You have the intense ideological warfare happening in writing over the Save the America Act.
And sandwiched right in the middle of all of that, you have a bricklayer from North Carolina and an ice cream scooper from Florida being honored as American heroes.
It's the entire American experience, the bureaucratic, the political, and the personal, all filed into one stack of papers.
And that is why we read the record, so you don't have to.
Though we hope you do.
We do. If you want to see these tributes or read Betty McCollum's full argument or check the details of that ag bill, go to congress.gov. Look up the congressional record for February 13, 2026. It's all there, public and free.
It's your government. It's worth a read.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back next time to decode more of the madness and the majesty of Congress.
See you then.
This has been Congress in Context. Goodbye.